be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
The Hockey Time Machine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey Time Machine. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. We're going to talk next to another member of the original Sabres ownership group, Howard Saperston. So let me say hello to Howard. Hi, Howard. Thank
Hi,
you
Glenn.
for your patience in waiting for us. Why don't you tell me first how you got involved with the ownership group?
I had known Seymour and Nordy. I was only 28, 29 years old, but I had been practicing goalie for the Bisons, the old Buffalo Bisons in the NHL, the AHL. I had gone to Nichols School, which had a hockey program, and I knew them from around the city. And when the team started, when they were looking for potential investors, actually Nordy asked me if I would be interested, and of course I jumped at it, and it went on from there. We actually became a board of the Sabres before we got in the league. We had, as Seymour said, 20% of the Oakland franchise, because the owner there, another goalie from Princeton, Barry Van Gerbig, couldn't keep up with the payments actually to the league. So we were, or Seymour and Nordy were offered the 20% ownership of Oakland with the idea that that would help us get into the league when they had the expansion. We actually, when we were selected along with Vancouver, we had to sell the Vancouver, or we had to sell the Oakland franchise, and we actually made 50% profit out of our investment, which was good. But I think Bobby Rich and myself and a gentleman out of Philadelphia, George Strawbridge, were the youngest board members. Bobby was 28, I was 29. I think George was 31, if I'm correct. And so that's how I got involved.
Now, you mentioned the Bison, and we have to ask you about the fact that before there was a Buffalo Sabres, the Bison were the team that represented pro hockey in the city of Buffalo. Tell me about the game that you got to play with them.
Well, I'll start with saying in those days, they only carried one goalie originally. So I happened to see Frankie Christie once, right when I graduated from college in about '63, that fall. I asked him if he ever needed a practice goalie, and he sort of asked me about my credentials, whatever. So I went down there and practiced for a number of years with them. And then when, even on days when one of the goalies retired or hurt or something, I practiced. The second goalie we had in Buffalo got hurt, so they took me to Pittsburgh along with Eddie Chadwick, who had a career in Boston in the NHL, also played for Hershey. He got hurt in the beginning of the third period, and Freddie Hunt, who was the coach, kind of looked at me and said, "Okay, you go in." So I went in, and after I kind of they allowed those days to have the backup goalie take some practice shots. And the referee came over and said, "Are you ready?" And I went, "No." And he kept saying, "Are you ready?" And I kept saying, "No." Finally, he said, "You're ready." It was an experience. Duke Harris was playing for Pittsburgh at that time. He took a shot that went in. If it had hit me, I think it would have killed me. But it was an experience. I enjoyed it. I didn't do particularly well, but I don't think I was expected to do particularly well. Pittsburgh was number 1 in the league, and we were, number 70 or something like that. We hadn't done very well, but it was a fun experience, and I enjoyed it. For a guy who's in real estate to get that opportunity, it was fun.
You stopped 6 shots, Howard, so that's a lot more than a lot of other people would have stopped. So give yourself some credit. All right. So in your years with the Sabres, there must be one story above the others that when you're at a party or you're sitting around the dinner table, you go, "This is my favorite Sabres story." So if you could, would you pick one out and share it with us?
Yeah, there are a lot of them, but one, I was practicing with the Sabres one day, and for some reason I was hot, and I stopped Gilbert 5 or 6 times in a row, and he was getting a little frustrated. It was just one of those days. So after practice, he goes, "Huey," he never could say Howie, "Huey, stay on the ice. We are going to play for a 6-pack. So he said, "I'm not going to lift the puck. 10 shots. Let's see if you can stop any." He went 10 for 10. You
went easy on him.
Yeah, I went baloney. He was good.
Well, what a dream it is to actually be in goal and have him shoot at you. I mean, that's a wonderful memory. It doesn't matter if you stopped any, right?
I enjoyed it. A goalie would get hurt or they give, well, for example, the first year, Roger Crozier is a lot of Donnie Luce probably remembers, didn't like to practice the day of a game or the day after a game. He really didn't like to play goal. So I got to practice quite a bit. So it was a great experience.
Howard, it was a great experience for us to have you here. I hope you will stick around. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
And we will have you back. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn.
All right. So the next person we're going to call in, and we have a special way of calling this person in, Ralph Mellenby. So we're going to call him in this way.
Hockey night in Canada.
It's Hockey Night in Canada.
It's hockey night in Canada.
From coast to coast, it's Hockey Night in Canada.
Ralph, thank you for joining us. You are well known as the executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada. Fewer people know that you are an original Sabre. So tell us how you got hooked up with the franchise in Buffalo.
I'm going to warn you right away. I got 15 minutes. I got to get back to my Canadians hockey game. Is that okay?
You bet. As any time you give us is time we appreciate. So
Okay,
go.
thanks. Well, when you're watching the, by the way, I got a book here in case anybody's interested. I found in my collection It's 1975, Spin of the Wheel, the story of the Buffalo Sabres. If you get a chance to get one at the old bookstores, pick it up. No, what happened with me was very interesting with the Sabres. I was the one that shot the film, by the way. You showed the Spin of the Wheel with Mr. Campbell. And there's quite a story there that people don't know. They decided to do the odd and even thing that Seymour explained. And I was filming for Hockey Night in Canada. This was a big deal. And they spun the wheel. And Mr. Campbell was quite ancient and getting old too. So he made a mistake when it spun. It was odd and even. And he made a mistake and named that the Vancouver Canucks had got the first pick. And what people don't know, the real hero in that was Brian O'Neill, executive vice president, ran up on the stage and said, Mr. Campbell, you goofed. You made a mistake. Nobody else could have done that. And then he corrected it, and they got the first pick. So they owe a lot to Brian O'Neill. He's still alive. You might be watching, but that was really the real story behind that. As far as the other things go, I got tied with the Sabres by accident. I went into work one day, and there in my boss's room was Seymour and Norty, and with another senior executive, meeting with my boss, Ted Huff. And they had just worked out what games would be blacked out in Toronto of the Buffalo team, and et cetera, et cetera. And they said, my boss said, Ralph, the Sabres have a real problem, and we've got to help them solve it. He was very friendly with the owners. I said, well, tell me what it is. He said, they don't have a television mobile that can do the games. And what people don't know is that when you have a franchise, even though you're not televising in your own area, you have to be able to televise it in your building to the visiting team. So I said, well, I think maybe we can work it out. I don't know, but I've got a great new mobile in Hamilton and a great crew there, and I've got my producers and directors and a lot of great people, and I can televise it for you. And they said, well, it won't be for too long. Don't worry. I remember Norty saying that. Won't be for too long. It was 3 years, by the way. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, Joe, you've got to go to the league and tell them, because we did Wednesday night hockey with Hockey Night in Canada on CHCH on Wednesdays. I said, you got to tell them you can't get the odd on Wednesdays for home games. You got to lie to them. That way, I can't give you the mobile when I'm using it. So they said, fine. So we went in and we got organized, and I thought it would just be for the one season, but Seymour, I'll tell you, it was for 3 seasons. And we would go over and do all the games, but they never had a Wednesday game because we were busy with the mobile. And it brought a lot of money to our company. It was nice, and it was a nice partnership. And that way I got to know Seymour and Norty. Really, they were the greatest owners I ever dealt with. They were a class act, and that's all I can tell you. They were terrific. And as we went through, we got opening night. I produced the first couple of games myself. Opening night, I got over in the odd early, and I decided, because I always like to get in early and get prepared, and the Sabres were skating on the ice in the warm-up, and I went to the washroom because I had to take a poop. So I went to the washroom, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, while I'm sitting there, a rat fell right on the top of my head. I was in shock. It was a dead rat, by the way. So I kicked the rat aside, and I went out to the ice surface, and there was Punch, my old pal. I said, Punch, you won't believe what just happened to me. I was sitting on the john, and a rat fell right on my head. And Punch said, Ralph, that's the way we say, welcome to the odd.
I will never think about the glamorous world of television quite the same.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a great experience. It was something we never did for any other team. It was because of my boss's friendship with the Knoxes. And we were there for 3 years and helped them to get Ted Darling, who was working for me at the time. And he transferred over, and we did a lot of good things with him. But the Fog Bowl, you talked about the Fog Bowl.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. I did a Grey Cup in the Fog in Toronto early in my career, and I had to direct it. And I learned how to use the low cameras to get under the fog by doing that football game. And that's exactly what we had to do doing that opening game. We had to use the low cameras to shoot under the fog and at ice level and just up from ice level, and use handheld cameras and everything to get under the fog. And that's why everybody on television didn't see much of the fog. I always remember, though, we had to keep stopping the game so the players could come out with blankets and skate around to get the fog out of it. But that was another television experience. And the last story I got for you, and I'll let you go. My boy Scott was was captain of the Florida Panthers, and he was playing in Buffalo, and he said, "Dad, why don't you and Mom come to the game? And I'll get you good seats." Right? I'd never been, over to a game in Buffalo just as a spectator. Great. So we walked in, we're in the lobby, and we bumped into Ted Darling. And Ted said, "Ralph, what are you doing here?" I said, "I've come to see my boy play against your team." And he said, "Well, we want to get a shot of you. Where are you sitting?" And I said, "Well, we're sitting in row 8 and seats 1 and 2, whatever it was." He said, "Good, we'll get a shot of you." So we're sitting there watching the game starts, and we're sitting. All of a sudden, this young, handsome guy comes down the aisle. And he said, "Mr. Mellenby, I'm Seymour Knox IV, and I'm here to invite you and your wife to the VIP room between periods." I said, "Wait a minute, I'm the enemy. That's my boy out there." He said, "No, we want you to come in between periods. The Knoxes want you badly. I'll come and get you." That was the first time I met Seymour, by the way. So next thing I know, Scott gets the first goal. My late wife said to me, "I think we're in trouble going up to that room." You got another goal later, by the way. So we went up the room. We were treated like royalty. We had a beautiful wine, and it was great seeing them again. I hadn't seen them in some years. And was a reunion. Came up after the second period. Scott, thanked the Lord, only got the next goal in the third period. And after the game, I went down to see my son. I said, "Scott, you really fouled me up in this building." He said, "Why?" I said, "I was sitting there as a spectator, and I'm the enemy. You're the Florida Panthers, and you get the first goal, and then you get the next goal and beat them 2-1. I said, "Don't you know the problems I'm in with the owners?" He said, "Dad, I'm not taking those goals back." So that's the end of the story. But we had a wonderful relationship there. And one of the sad stories, I was sitting next to Tim Horton the night that he died, playing with the Sabres. He was playing in Maple Leaf Gardens, and I went to the Hot Stove League. He was there with his co-founder of the Tim Horton restaurants. And they sat next to me, and we yapped a bit. And the next morning when I got up, my wife told me that Tim had been killed in the car crash, and I felt like I'd lost a member of the family. And so we've got a lot of Buffalo stories, a lot of stuff, but you got a lot of guests. Get to them, okay?
Well, I will listen to my executive producer, Ralph, who's telling me, "Come on, move it along. We'll let you get back to the game." Thank you so much for sharing your time. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Now we can segue. I hope Ralph would be proud of me because we're going to segue here. He mentioned Mr. Darling, Ted Darling, and we happen to have his son with us, Joel Darling, who is still an executive with Hockey Night in Canada. So if we can bring in Joel, we can continue the conversation. Joel, thank you also for being patient with us. We want to hear about your dad and you growing up with the Sabres. So let me ask you first, leaving Hockey Night in Canada, because I don't think he did both jobs for that long. What was it like transitioning from a network job to being the lead man for a single franchise?
Well, I think it worked out really well. He was mainly doing intermissions for Hockey Night in Canada. He was doing sports in Ottawa, but then did intermissions in Montreal on the weekends, and took the job over actually from Dan Kelly, who went to St. Louis a couple of years before that. But I think in the end, I still remember crossing the Peace Bridge. We stayed at the Holiday Inn in downtown Buffalo the first time we went. At that point, there were 5 kids that remember crossing the border and setting up shop. We lived in Williamsville, but I think for him, being a part of a new franchise and being the main kind of play-by-play guy at that time was a thrill for him. His hero was Foster Hewitt, and that's all he wanted to do was to do play-by-play, and certainly that's what he was able to do. So I think being there as the infancy of the team and going through those early years of tough times, but also some great times. And I think the other thing is, and I'm anxious to hear you get to some of the players as well, some of the alumni that you have on tonight, is they were very close. And I always remember my dad having really good relationships with the teams, whether it was at Halloween parties or my mom being in the wives' room or, different events. And as Seymour talked about, we were invited to the Christmas party. So we, as a family with 6 kids, I remember those Christmas parties in the 70s, being a part of them and being there. But for sure, that was a dream job for him, and he was able to do it for over 20 years and loved it.
All right. Well, let's hear a few seconds of your dad doing his job.
Here he comes. In on goal with the breakaway. Tucker going and shoots. He scores! John Tucker! And the Sabres take a 4-2 lead.
Did your dad have a certain philosophy in terms of broadcasting, how much of a homer to be, how much reporting to do, how close to get to the players? What was his philosophy?
Yeah, I think, back then it was a different time, right? They traveled with the players on a regular basis. They were on the buses and on the planes, and again, went to many parties with the team. So it was a different time. So I think, tried to walk a fine line. He was certainly, gosh, when I think back, certainly when I came up to school in Toronto, I think a lot of people considered him to be a homer. And I was okay with that. I think at the time, the Sabres were a better team than the Leafs. So I always chalk that up to people in Toronto being jealous of the Sabres, who had, some good runs there in the 70s. But I think more than anything, he just wanted to show the excitement of the game and the passion that he had for it. And he certainly did that. And like I said, he was close to the players. And they would do things to him that he would tell me about, where he'd fall asleep on a plane and they'd rip out the last couple of pages of his book, or they would cut his tie while sleeping on the plane. Or I remember one time I went down with him to an open practice that was always held the day after Christmas. And he never was a hockey player. He never skated, but he decided he was going to go in the old odd from the dressing room to the penalty box, where he was going to MC the event. And I don't know who it was, maybe one of the players, maybe it was Don Luce, probably Don, but somebody put tape on the bottom of his skate. So he skated out in front of 16,000 people and fell on his ass. But again, it was a real different time then.
Another way it was a different time, and you're closer to this than I am, so you would know, but it seems to me that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe, the tie between a broadcaster and the city that he or she broadcasts in, the bond was much greater. Now, today, there's so many platforms. Games are broadcast by so many different entities with different broadcasters. I remember there was a time that your team was your broadcaster and your broadcaster was your team. And wasn't Ted that for Buffalo?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I was looking at some pictures here, and I just pulled this one up here. So this is what he did in those early years, and introduced people in Western New York to the game of hockey. That's at the 14th annual Kenmore Cubs banquet in 1972. I don't know these guys, Bob Hart, Don Casey, Bill Haskell, and a guy named Tom D'Angelo, but he did all kinds of those. And, that's what introduced, he was a person who really helped people, introduce people to the game of hockey. When I think of Terry Crisp and Pete Weber in Nashville, when Nashville started, the same sort of things. They became celebrities within that town and became more than broadcasters because of their ties to the community.
One more Ted Darling story. In 2021, because of the pandemic, broadcasters are sitting in studios, watching monitors, broadcasting events hundreds or thousands of miles away. It's just what you have to do. But your dad did it before anybody else, I think. Will you tell that story?
Sure. Yeah, that was during the blizzard of 1977. And he couldn't get to the airport in Buffalo. So I believe a plane did take off with only 12 or 13 players. And so he was to call the game from Montreal on television that night. So what he ended up doing was he found somebody in Montreal to call the game. I think it was on WGR at the time. And what he decided to do was call the game on radio just by watching the TV at home. So I still surprised to this day. He took a black and white TV instead of what we had was a fairly large color television at the time. He took it. It was probably a 12-inch television. I think the reason he did it was that it had an earpiece, so I could sit next to him and actually listen to the game and pass on information about the games. So I would pass on information about penalties and things like that. And he held the phone upside down, the old style phone. And I remember the only mistake I made, I was maybe 14 at the time doing his stats, and I'd written out on a piece of paper, there's 5 seconds left of the period. I handed it to him. By the time I gave it to him, by the time he saw it, to say there was 5 seconds left in the period, the siren was going to Montreal to end the period. But he always said it was the easiest game he ever did because he just hung up the phone and went to bed.
Now that's working from home.
That's right. Yeah.
Joel, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience in waiting for us, and thanks for sharing some stories. As always, we know we've had you on before, and we very much appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right. We're going to do a line change now and invite the checking center, Don Luce, who's going to be our next guest. Don joins us. He played 894 NHL games between 69 and 82. 766 of those games were wearing a Sabres sweater. And his highest scoring season was the Stanley Cup run of 1974-75, when he played all 80 regular season games and scored 33 goals. Now, Don, this is the first time that I have had the pleasure of speaking with you, but those who know you tell me that as good a player as you were, that you're an even better guy. So how does a nice guy survive in the nasty world of pro hockey?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't think my wife would say I'm such a nice guy at times. But, going back, it's you're surrounded by great players. Our teams in the 70s were just phenomenal as a group off the ice. And like Joel said, that, Ted was part of the players. He wasn't looked at as a broadcaster as far as we were concerned. He was part of the team. And I think that all stemmed from what Seymour says, that the Knoxes made it a family affair. My wife, she remembers to this day that Gene Knox took them out to the ski hill and took them to other different events and made them feel like part of something big and part of a big family. And, I think that was instrumental in getting the team as a whole to be a team, and to be a good team, you have to be a good family. And I think, my honest feeling is that it spread to the fans. We were just part of a big team, and the people here, treated us so well, and they lived and died with what we did on the ice. When we won, they were ecstatic. When we lost, they were sad, just like the players were sad. And, I think that really helped develop the organization. And that's key, is to have the right people in the right place. And when you're surrounded with good players, Craig Ramsey, Danny Gare, Rick Sealing, all these type of players that were on the team, Billy Height, Korab, Shawnee, like we still, we don't see each other for a long time. We start up just like we had never left, and I don't know, it was such it made us so easy to play here, and to try and give your best every shift in, shift out, game in, game out. And so I think, I don't know if I hope that the players of the other team that I played against didn't think I was a nice guy.
Oh. But you're still talking about the all your teammates, so you're still being a nice guy. Here's what you once said about your home rink, because you mentioned the fans. About the odd, you said, we had to walk through the fans to get in the building and get out of the building, and they were always there cheering you. You have no idea how that felt. So will you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. Walking, you had to go through the fans to get in the building, but also you had to go through the fans immediately coming out of the dressing room. They were there, and they were so supportive. Like, you'd walk through the group of fans, and they'd be cheering you on, and if we lost, they'd be saying, you'll get it next time, or whatever. And they weren't afraid to say, well, you had a bad game. And so, we did have some bad games, but not too many in the odd. And it was just such a uplifting thing. When you scored, your teammates are happy, you're happy. And then you feel the vibrations of the fans cheering in the auditorium, and that they're really happy too. It's just like they're part of the family, just like I was one of their sons and I scored a goal for.
The Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame called you perhaps the most versatile performer ever to wear the Sabres sweater. How much pride did you take in doing some of the dirty and less glamorous jobs, but ones that were equally important?
Well, I think that was, it's always been my philosophy. You got to play, if you're going to play a game, and I think I've always done this, is that you got to give your best. And, different parts of the game, certain players get to play them if they're better at it, or have the ability, a better ability at certain things. And I think that, I tried to become an all-around player. I mean, coming up, I was a scorer in junior hockey. I finished third in the whole league in scoring. And when I turned pro, you realize that, hey, there's more to the game than offense. And you got to work, and you got to check, you got to work hard. And to me, my dad always said that luck is the product of hard work. And if you work hard, you're going to get some luck along the way.
I very much appreciate it. Don, I know we made you wait quite a while. I very much appreciate it. Thank you for sticking around, and thank you for sharing your memories with us. It means an awful lot.
Well, Glenn, thanks for having me. I think this is great. I think that it's great to hear the stories, and to let the people understand, maybe get a little more insight into our on ice stuff. But if I can say something about off ice, I think that, again, that Ted Darling was a great individual. He was so much fun to be around. He didn't do anything. He just was part of the team, and he didn't have to get in with the players because he was already there. He was already part of them. And my thanks to the Knox family. They started it all, and they brought in a great man in Punch Imlach. And my years with the Sabres just were terrific. Thank you very much, Glenn.
Well, tell your wife that we all think you're really a good guy, And the next time she disagrees, you tell her that she should come talk to us.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Next time, if you want to talk about the spouses coming on, maybe you should ask her to come on the show and talk about what the spouses go through.
Okay, Don, thank you so much.
All right, then. Take care.
Bye-bye. The next person we're going to talk to, who also deserves our great thanks for sticking around, is Tony McKegney. And Tony, thank you so much. It's been an hour and a half since we started this, and you've been sitting here patient, waiting for us. So first of all, thank you. I'm going to read some of your accomplishments here, and then we'll let you speak. 912 games for Tony McKegney on his recipe. Ugh. 320 goals on his resume. First 5 seasons spent in Buffalo with some eye-popping numbers. 37 goals in 80-81, 36 goals in 82-83. So let's start at the beginning, Tony. Since you started your career, your NHL career with the Sabres, tell me about your first big league experiences.
I was going to say, can you hear me okay, guys?
We can hear you.
Oh, good, great. And I was going to say, it was so nice listening to Donnie Lou speak, because he sort of exemplifies the whole experience coming to the Buffalo Sabres. Because I was so lucky to come to a team that was really good and established. And Donnie Luce was from near my hometown of London, Ontario. I came from Sarnia. And it was such a great team of veterans, players, that you learn from. I used to sit out and shoot pucks with Danny Guerin and Richard Martin after practice, shooting 100 pucks at an empty net and just honing. I knew how to score in junior, but it was a different game. And then Donnie Luce used to stay out and show me how to take face-offs and so forth, and tell me stories about playing with Gordie Howe. So coming to Buffalo, and the Knox family, I'll relate to that. When I got drafted by the Sabres, they gave me a Sabres tie, and I signed a contract at the draft in Montreal, and they gave me a check for X number of $1,000 at that time. And I just felt welcome from the beginning, because it seemed like a family, that team was. And I was so lucky to come to an established hockey team and fit in, because everybody treated me as an equal, if you will.
How much interaction did you have with ownership, with the Knox brothers? And if you did, that's going to be a longer answer than if you didn't. But if you did, do you think that's different than the interaction that players maybe today have with ownership?
Well, I'm going to tell you that my favorite story about the Knox family is that I lit it up in the rookie camp before the veterans came. And Nordy Knox came in a limousine to St. Catharines, Ontario, which is where our training camp was, and took me for lunch. And I'd never been in a limousine before. And he specifically came because he knew I was going to be on the team. And that was the Knox family. They gave me a tie at that draft, and I felt like it was a Buffalo Sabre. And they just brought me in and made me feel like I was part of the Knox Sabres family, and by them sitting up behind the bench in each game with G. Knox and Nordy and his wife and the ownership group, every time he scored a goal, you looked up and they were there with us. But I want to remain about talking about Donnie Luce. What a Jim Schoenfeld, Danny Gare, what a leadership that team had at the time. And they got me. And after hearing Donnie, I just had to think about how important he was to that team with Craig Ramsey and a checking line that scored 90 goals with Danny Gare. I was just mesmerized, and I'd never seen anybody that kill penalties like Don Luce and Craig Ramsey. I'd never seen that before, that they specialized in that and were able to score goals at the same time. So Jim Schoenfeld blocking shots. I just certain things, and I was so lucky to go to that team. It was an established team, and I learned a lot, and that it helped my career by going to the Buffalo Sabres.
You mentioned the family aspect of the Sabres, and since you did get a chance to play with other organizations, do different organizations have different cultures? Are they more alike, or are they quite individual and unique, and some welcoming and some not so much?
No, I was going to say that the Knox family was Buffalo residents. They came to every game, and I played for the Minnesota North Stars. I'll give you an example. And the Gunn family lived in San Francisco, California, or San Jose or something. And I saw them once a year. And just to give you an example, and the Knox family were living in Buffalo, and they were attending every game, like they were part of the team. And they were part of the team, and that's the difference I can tell you, having played for other teams, where they were part of the team. And I'll tell you one more thing, very interesting. My parents used to come to the odd game because they lived about 3.5 hours away, and they were afforded and not many people were, Craig Ramsey's parents, and I think Bill Height's parents, they were afforded the opportunity to come to the director's room, which is VIP room, as somebody related to before. And every time they came to the game, my parents were able to go for pregame dinner in the director's room with all the Sabres ownership group, including Howard Saperstein, who was on previously, and Dr. Collins, I think, and Dave Foreman and so forth. But when my parents were afforded with that, it was awesome that my parents were able to go with the ownership group before the game. And I was so oh my God! It was just, what a privilege that my parents were afforded that thing, and it was just the Knox family reaching out to my parents and welcoming me to the games, and they probably came once a month, but not too many people were afforded that privilege.
What a great story. One other thing I want to ask you about. Sportsnet described you as being part of an overlooked generation of black players. So I want to do our part to correct a little bit of that right now. What is it that you'd like to make sure that we know about you, or about hockey, or about anything else? Because we don't want to overlook you.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that when you're playing hockey, you're just trying to make it, basically, in essence. And obviously that part of it was a distraction. But I mean, when I made the NHL, I just felt like I made my goal of obtaining being in the NHL and maintaining doing that for 15 years. I just felt like everything else aside, I was so happy to attain my goal, and I felt privileged just to play in the National Hockey League. Here I am lining up, and Don Luce is my teammate, and Jim Schoenfeld is my teammate, Danny Gare is my line mate, Derek Smith, and so on down the line. And I'm lining up against Guy Lafleur and Bobby Clark, and the people I was watching on TV for many years before I got there. And every day you sort of had to pinch yourself and say, my God, somebody's paying me to do this. And I'm hanging around with 25 guys, and we're having fun. And it'd be like when you're 20 years old, you couldn't ask for a better life. It was like being in high school, and you're getting paid for it. And every day you're just having fun and laughing and winning together, losing together, learning about life. And honest to God, tonight, it was so nice to see Donnie Luce, because he taught me so much, not just about hockey, but about life. And I got a very special story to tell you. My first year, Donnie Luce had a team party, and we played board games all night. And it was just the best party in my 15 years of playing professional hockey. Donnie and Diane, and it was just the greatest thing. They had young kids. And the other thing I was going to mention is that when I was a young kid, I looked at Donnie Luce and Jim Schoenfeld and Craig Ramsey, and they played 10 years in the league. And I thought to myself, I want to play 10 years in the league. And I sort of just followed their lead. And I ended up playing 15 years. But I mean, for that board party thing. It was just like we played board games at a team party, and it was just and Donnie Luce and Diane orchestrated that party. I'll never forget it. I was 20 years old.
Are you as nice as Don Luce? I mean, nobody probably can be as nice, but do you strive to be as nice? Are you getting closer?
You know, I was going to mention that my first year, Don made me feel comfortable because his afro was bigger than mine. and yeah, his was bigger than mine. But the worst injury I ever saw in my career, Donnie Luce got the skate cut, and it was the scariest thing outside of the Clint Malarchuk thing. I was in that game too. But Donnie got his, and he showed up for practice the next day after almost getting his eye put out. And there's a picture of it. And he showed up for practice the next day. Couldn't believe it. And he was a warrior.
Well, so were you. I checked, and Don played 894 NHL games, 894. You played 912. So I would say that if Don Luce in some way was your role model and you wanted to play as long as him, well, you played a few games more. So there you go.
Yeah, I was going to mention too, Glenn, that Donnie, before he left Buffalo, we drafted a young kid and signed him, Rob McClanahan, for the U.S. Olympic team. And Donnie sort of envisioned, I think, and I could be wrong, that Rob McClanahan might replace him before he got traded to L.A. and then eventually Toronto. And he was out there after practice helping him learn to take face-offs. This young kid that came from the Olympic winning team from Lake Placid. And that was a dedication that Don Luce had to a younger player. He was showing him how to take face-offs after practice, knowing that eventually he might replace him. And that was the dedication that the Buffalo Sabres were. Don Luce was out there basically helping this young upstart. And I looked at it after practice, and I'm thinking, what class that is with a Don Luce.
He is class, and Tony, so are you. We are very, very appreciative that you took the time, showed the patience to wait till we could get to you. And thank you for sharing your insights. It means so much to us. Thank you so much. And we already look forward to having you back when we can talk for a longer period of time.
I was going to say too that I enjoyed everything, and particularly Seymour Notch, who's my neighbor now at where I'm sitting today, not in Florida. But it was really nice to hear his insight, and Howard Saperson about the formation of the franchise and what they went through to bring the team to Buffalo. And I just remember as we owned the Toronto Maple Leafs back during our time in Buffalo. It was awesome.
Seymour, do you want to talk to your neighbor? You're muted right now.
Well, it's been great having Tony not too far away. I see him very often, and we've had a couple of backyard conversations in front of a fire pit with our friend Rick. And it's been great. It's nice having him back as part of the Sabres alumni community in Western New York.
Yeah, great, Seymour, and so much. Love your family so much. I love your mom, and I miss your dad and your uncle. And it was a family affair that we had, and I'm so happy that was my first team was the Buffalo Sabres, and I'm so pleased and so appreciative of things happen for a reason. And I came to Buffalo, and you guys made me feel so welcome there, so much so.
Yeah, Glenn, Tony and I are in a hockey book club together.
Well,
we've been having fun. We have Squid's book that's on the that's our next read.
Rick Vive, right? The only problem here is we're not having enough conflict. We're still not having enough conflict.
Hmm.
We got to have a panel with people who don't get along so well.
Did you want to call Scotty Bowman?
Okay. Actually, this has been a pleasure. I don't want to interrupt you. If you have more conversation, I'll just sit and be quiet.
There was no negative about my time in Buffalo. Honest to God, it was such a pleasure. I just feel privileged to have come into such a great organization, and that's all I can think about. Feeling lucky that I didn't go to Atlanta, I didn't go to another team. I went to a great hockey team and a great family. And honest to God, I played on several teams, and it was unique. And I'm so happy that was my first team. I learned a lot from starting there and being there. And there was never a dull moment. Everybody just had fun. We just had fun.
Well, Seymour, you did good. See, you did good.
Well, we've been very, very blessed, Glenn, as I mentioned earlier, and we have had terrific fans coming through our Sabres organization for many, many years, as Tony mentioned, and it's hard to single out a favorite player because we're all family.
I was going to say, Glenn, I was going to say recently, we did a top 50 players in over 50 years. And I had the opportunity to ask Jim Schoenfeld how he felt the night that Tim Horton died and when he got the news. And they played the next day. And he said he went for a walk on the beach at Crystal Beach. They were living near each other and neighbors. And they played a game the next night. And I had the chance to ask Jim Schoenfeld, how did you feel that day? Because they were good friends, they're defense partners, roommates. And for me, it was interesting to ask him that question. I always wondered about how Showing felt on that, getting the news that morning.
I'm going to show you a picture. This is Tim and Jim Schoenfeld and Roger Crozier.
Yeah.
Sometimes forget with our sports heroes that these are also people, and not just Tim who died, but his teammates and the people in management and all the people around them who still have to go out and do their job. But you guys aren't robots. You're not automatons. You have real feelings too. And sometimes the fans forget about that.
Yeah, well, Seymour, I'm sure you must have been around at that time. Obviously, I was not.
I was, Tony. And, Dad and I were in Toronto that night for the game. Tim had broken his jaw earlier in the week. I believe Rennie Robert hit him with a shot that deflected off the stick and broke his jaw. And he was third star that night at the game against the Leafs. Dad and I met him after the game in the Sabres locker room because Dad loved going to the locker room and congratulating all the players, whether they won or lose, just to say thank you and great job. And the next morning, we had breakfast and Dad didn't say a word. I got to school and it was all over the radio that sadly Tim had died in a car crash. And it was fun actually meeting Ron Joyce a number of years later when Hamilton was trying to come into the NHL to see the successes that Tim's tiny donut shop, or his two donut shops, I think he had at the time, blossom into the great company that it was. I think Ted Darling and Donnie Luce may have some Tim Horton donut stories. I don't know if they're still on the call with us.
We're actually about 20 minutes over when we normally quit, but this has been so great. None of us wants to quit. So let me thank the both of you one more time and for being so genuine. We really appreciate it. That is what makes these programs work, that you guys speak from the heart. So please allow me to speak from the heart and say how much that we appreciate you sharing what you did.
That's great, Glenn, and great job tonight. It was really enjoyable to hear from everybody else, from everybody that came on. It was really entertaining for me. I really appreciate it. And you, Seymour, my neighbor, won't you be my neighbor?
We'll look forward to seeing you soon, Tony. If we can do the walk around the lake.
Yeah, I'll look for you.
Ready. It's getting warm.
Yeah, I'll look for you walking.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Glenn.